Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Styrian Children's Rights Talks 2025 of Kinderbüro, an Austrian children's rights organization based in Graz. This series of free talks is part of the Styrian Children's Rights Weeks that aims to bring children and their needs in the public focus. Today, we highlight the topic of children's rights and urban development. More concrete, we focus on urban planning with children, with the main question of how meaningful and effective participation can be achieved. My name is Katja Hausleitner. I'm dealing in Kinderbüro since more than 10 years with projects and advocacy work, especially in the context of children's rights and the built environment. Today, I will be the host for this session, and I'm looking forward to discussing the topic of meaningful and effective participation with children in the setting of urban development. As I know from our work experience, there is still a way to go. I'm happy to introduce our two speakers for this session. The first is Özlemnur Ataol, an urban planner, designer, and researcher that focuses on child and youth participation based at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. A warm welcome to you, Özlem. May you introduce yourself a bit?
Thank you, Katja. You did a great introduction already, but I would add that I define myself as an advocate for creating inclusive and sustainable cities with young people and for young people and beyond, like inclusive to all.
Thank you. The second speaker is Kozina-Voit. He is a municipal councillor for the city of Graz. We focus on climate mobility, participation, and economics, and he's an academic in the field of environmental system sciences. A warm welcome to you, Christian, as well.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you for the invitation to this talk.
Do you want to add something to your introduction?
I'm very curious about this talk because I think it's very important to have a better urban planning, to have good participation, and I think it's very interesting to especially focus on children in this context, because we often talk about how can we bring in people to these processes, but the question who are these people, it's not addressed that often, and I think it's good to talk about that in this context.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I'm very happy you two are here, and I'm looking forward for discussing with you our questions. So at the beginning, I would like to give a short introduction to the topic for all the people who are listening later and maybe are not so close to this topic. So participation of children is manifested in the Austrian Federal Constitution. It states that children must be involved in all matters affecting them in an age-appropriate manner. The design of cities has a significant impact on how children and adolescents find a place in the neighborhood or move independently and safely in the city or community. Among all interests that come together in the context of urban development, it is often challenging to consider the interests of children in all processes or to provide children with space in an age-appropriate way. So in this expert discussion, we focus on the effective participation of children and adolescents in urban planning and design. We want to discuss how meaningful and age-appropriate participation of children can be achieved in the busy everyday planning processes. So among other things, we ask ourselves in the following questions: how can children and young people be meaningfully involved in planning and design? What experience do we have and what should be taken into account? What is challenging? And in the end, how can one get started and also sustainably anchor participation? We will do that in 3 discussion rounds. In the end, we will make a summary, and Yeah, and maybe we do have some links that can be added to the documentation in the end. So let's start. I'm really happy to be with you together, and starting with the first question. I want to focus in the first round on how can children and young people be meaningfully involved in planning and design, and what experience do exist. So maybe we can start with you, Özlem.
Thank you.
What would you say?
So when I started working on this topic, this was a topic for my PhD actually, and the very first thing that I did was a literature review. What is there and what is happening within the theory of participation of young people, and I realized that there are dynamics, especially within the mind of adults who are the decision makers, who are the policy makers, and that we need to change that mindset. For example, within the international policy making, children's participation entered late, very late, later than 60s when we were talking about adult participation actually, entered late into this policy scene. And still there are biases happening. For example, adults thinking that why we need to include kids, they don't have valuable things to say. They don't have the capacity to be able to think about cities, urban life, the decision makings that they are doing, or even they think that we don't have that kind of budget, or we don't want to spare budget for that engagement purposes. For example, participation later entered in the international decision making after almost beginning of 90s. So I would say this was a late engagement, start of the engagement. And of course, there are other factors. For example, protection was always the case, that we paid attention when we talk about kids. For example, the two World War affected the policymaking era, that we need to protect kids. But it's always a balance, always goes one side, then the participation, and that mindset of adults being in charge or protecting their condition, being in charge is always the case. So I would say we need mind changing in that regard.
That's already a really good start, the mindset, what we need. So maybe I can hand you over to Christian, because you are like in the daily life work, who brings also important topics into the city parliament of Graz. So what would you say? Do you have like the same impression that there is still a lot of work to do in sense of the mindset? So bringing the right mindset to the people who are responsible for those processes at the end of the side of the city of Graz?
In general, yes. I think we have some politicians and also some people in the administration who realize that it's a big chance to involve people and involve children. But I see, especially in the everyday work with the administration, that there are many people who think, okay, it's just more to do for me, and I need more resources for that, and in the end I get so many answers, I don't know what to do with that, especially in this field of planning, which is a very technical field, and you see that people often think in a very technical way, and that it's hard to realize for them that it's easier to make more participation in the beginning, in the end, the whole process will be shorter and more effective, because all the people who come afterwards and say, "Oh, we don't want that," and so on and so on, they wouldn't, or many of them wouldn't have come if they would be involved from the very beginning. So this is a general problem in mind, and I think it's extremely important for participation in general, and of course especially important for children. And I think for children, it's not only for them, because they get involved and get a better environment in the city maybe, but it's important for sustainable development as a whole. Because if you listen to the children, the ideas they have, they're usually very sustainable. They want to have better conditions for walking to schools. They want to have the possibility to cycle where they live. So all the arguments children bring in, they help in a sustainable urban development. And that's why I think it's extremely important to listen to children, to take it into account. And in the end, for me, it's always the question of the methods. Of course, I mean, there are different methods used for participative processes, but of course, many of them are not really cannot really be used by children, especially. Some can be used by younger people, but I think it's important to really think about which methods are used in the participation processes in urban planning, and then in the end, of course, how can you bring in these answers to the whole process?
So the methods for sure also a huge topic, or a huge point as a basis for meaningful and effective participation. Please allow me to stay still at the structure, at the frame of cities first. One thing I want to add is, I don't know if you know, Christian, you should, I'm sure you do, but City of Graz has, in cooperation with Kinderbüro, brought in, so a lot of parties in the city parliament brought in a resolution for children rights and children participation, which said that all people should be participated in belongings, in topics that belong to children or that concern children. So I would just like, so that would be a first question to you. If you have the feeling that this had an impact, if it changed something, if it's like if it's real for everybody and present in the city parliament or in the administration. And the second point is what you really also said, like about is the mindset already mainstream in this on city level in politics and in administration. So my question also would be, is there, or I would be interested to know, as you all have like education, you have like this education possibilities for different topics. Is the children rights or participation, working with children, is there a topic? Because that would be a huge impact in changing the mindset in context of child participation on that level. So
concerning the first question, I think in general it's still a very political decision. So you have some decisions made, but in the single process, so if we want to build a new environment, a new street, whatever, it's always a new question: how can we organize this participative process. And I think it would be important to have a clearer guidelines for that you really, I don't know if you can say that in English, but to invent the wheel always new. It feels like that. And then you see sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's very, it's a big process. And you think, okay, maybe that was a little bit too much even, because I think that's also possible that it's needs more resources than it should need. So in the end, I think it's important to think about these guidelines. And I didn't think about the idea of education until now. I don't know what is offered to the people in the administration in this context. As counselors, we don't have special education offers. It's our
You don't? Because actually there are some I just know it from communities out of Graz. And like if there are like counselors, they are connected to youth and families as topics. So all the counselors actually, there is like this academy for communities. And the most of them are doing like workshops in connection to legal rights, that they just know what to do. But I always thought it would be a really good, so Städte- und Gemeindebund. So I thought it would be really good to implement something in that sense, to change the mindset of
I just thought it will be a party thing. So all the parties organize themselves for their counselors education offers, and it's different topics, and it of course depends on the party. And Städte- und Gemeindebund, I know that they pay if you use an education offer, they pay for this. But I didn't see a list of offers what I could do as a counselor. So yes, I think it's always also a question of how the parties organize it, and many of the structures still work very well for the old parties, like red and black, and sometimes also blue. But yeah, these networks, they don't reach everybody. So yeah,
so
maybe one could also think about how you could organize that better.
Yeah. So I would like to give that back to you, Özlem. In the Netherlands, what is your impression? So for sure you're not on this political area at the moment, but for sure somehow you have insights for your work. Do you have an impression that it's the same? Do you have the same impression from the Netherlands or the city of Groningen or other cities, or is it different?
Before going into that, I want to connect what my colleague said actually about the guidelines, creating those guidelines, because this is also something that I am working towards, that how we can achieve institutionalized participation, not sporadically project-based, but is continuous and is accepted within the institutional cycles, national and local. How we can achieve that. And I have been thinking, there is one book, a very good book by Mike Weilman. I think he's German. And I remember that book seeing only in German. I was like, oh no, I really need that book for my PhD. And recently there's a translation available in English, luckily. And that book advocates for giving the voting rights for children. And that could be one of the starting point and the big step into creating that institutionalized participation, because one of the three main points in the book is that if we give voting rights to children, that will help ensure that politicians take children's concerns with an equal seriousness that they do with adults. And then the second one, that is a matter of democratic justice. Then we can achieve the fully democratic, the concept of democracy. And then the third one, regardless of the assumptions, children are capable enough to democratically competent enough as adults, and they can possess judgment into like through their informed decision. And that is a recent highlighted and rekindled discussion in theory as well. I see many papers coming out and advocating for that through their own context and how to do it, how to advocate for it. And I want to also follow what Christian said, that urban planning and design holds technical knowledge and technical language. So the how question, how we can translate that language, is through those guidelines on the top of the institutionalized participation. We are in a good, living in a good era, I would say it. Like, we have the power of AI, we have the organizations like Kinderbüro advocating and working for children's rights and participation especially. And I know that plenty of guidelines available, and these are giving good responses to the how question, how we can make it ethical, how we can make it like power relation equally distributed. And these are all already discussing, but the willingness and the changing the mindset through maybe giving the voting rights to children is a start. And coming back to what is happening in my context, as far as I know, many regional governments have their own children councils. So I can't comfortably say that if they have jurisdiction to be able to affect the decision making. I can't say that for certain. But one thing I can say, I did my PhD with the children from Istanbul, Turkey. And I can say that even my colleague said that the Article 12, he mentioned that, or you mentioned, Katja, that children should be in every decision that is related to or matter to them. That is the direct translation of the UNCRC Article 12. So you can't trace that Article 12 in any level of policy making in Turkey. That's for certain, that I know from my research. But coming back to the Netherlands, that I can say that there are some organizations like Kinderrechte and children councils, that they are actively collaborating with adults towards a decision making that could be sustainable development. And if I follow up with what my colleague says, sustainable development as a whole actually can benefit from the ideas coming from kids, because I'm heavily working sustainable development or sustainable cities with young people, and my students, research students, master students, doing their thesis on that regard. And I fully support that claim. That is actually factual. If we collaborate more with young people, we will be one step closer to achieve sustainable futures.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We could talk, I guess, about each of your points a long time. So I just would like to add to end this first round that for sure, as you said, Kinderbüro is completely also in the agreement of letting children vote. Even from which age is a huge discussion part, because there is like a very good book that says voting from 0, just going with the thinking of when children are ready to vote, they will vote, you know. So it's really themselves. And then we have actually in the city of Graz, so Kinderbüro by now, it was from the beginning, it was founding it with the city of Graz and accompanying it for all the years, for like 15 years, I guess it was, Christian, or 20, 15, I guess. And really it works really well. So they meet like all 2 weeks, they have their own budget, they're really considered in huge decisions. Although I think here to consider not to put a pressure on children, because in our children's parliament, it works that way that they have access to be part of everything that people bring to us to suggest them, but they are choosing. They're choosing their topics. They're choosing where they want to be integrated in the process or where they want to engage. So it's more a democracy school. If you make it to a children parliament in sense of, and you have to bring like the children's perspective to the city politics and administration, then sometimes it can get a bad drive, because like it's like, okay, we order children to be there, and then we say like, we ask the children, and as we know about all the resources, sometimes it's shortened, and then you're just part like on a table with 20 decision makers of really huge companies, and then there are 2 children as a mayor, and female and male, and then they should represent all the children. So we really care a lot about that there is right setting. You cannot order the mayor and the female and male mayor. You can bring important decisions to them. They engage as a whole group. They decide if they want to be part of that working group. Actually, they create their own topics and they engage for their own topics. And we help them and support them that they can connect with the people needed to advance or improve problems, to come to solutions to certain problems. Like mobility is always a huge topic, but also food in schools is a huge topic from the last years. So they have really their own topics. So I think you really also then have to, as Christian said with the methods before, how is the setting of participation? Maybe we really can bring them to the second round and dive deeper in that field, where it becomes a good and meaningful participation in the end, and where maybe it's just, it's like participation that creates somehow the feeling that somebody included children, but actually it's not more than a picture, or just like the first round, and that's really properly done, but then you lost all the needs of the children on the way, and in the end there wasn't anything of the children anymore in the results. So it's really about, I think, as you said before, just to end this first round, it's so important that you create this mindset in a mainstream of why it's important, how it can be important, how to talk to children, what to consider, also in sense of a safe space for children within these processes, also in sense of creating resolutions and laws that makes this space of child participation. And then like, okay, so where can it be, as Christian said before, I think, where is the place for participation, for which age, which children do involve or have to be involved, and how is that going to happen? And where maybe we already know a lot, we just need to implement the children's perspective. As for example, advocates, children's rights advocates also can do it, because maybe it's not so complex that you don't have to develop it all the time from anew. And where is it important really to go into this qualitative participation process, and how should it be proceed? Yeah. And therefore, I would open the second round of what should be taken really into account and what is challenging. And maybe with what should be taken into account, I would start with you, Özlem, again. And then we'll give over to Christian.
What should be taken into account in terms of, I want to talk about this context in the context of setting the right environment for young people. Maybe as a base, we can use how we approach to capabilities, how we see the skills and capabilities of young people. So there is one approach called capability approach, and within that, it's formulate, if we want to do something, we can do it if the environment and the political setting affording that aim that we want to achieve. So that includes our internal capabilities. That refers to, in our context, the skills of young people, understanding the urban environment and knowing their own experience. So we are on the same page that they are capable. And external conditions like policies, recognizing their right to participate, or providing right setting for their participation. So they will be able to say something, and that saying will be implemented in return back to reflected back to their urban environment. So it's like a formulation, internal capabilities for us, external conditions, and we add at the end we have the combined capabilities to achieve aim action. For example, young people, a young person's ability to advocate for a park, that is his or her internal capability, depending on policies, recognizing the right to participate. This is referring to external capability. And then the institutions provide platforms for their voice to be heard. And if we direct our conversation to the right setting, I would say there are a lot of research on the methodology for young people's participation. And one of the main point is going where they are. So sometimes we tend to, Katja already mentioned, we can have two kids in an institutional setting. They will not be comfortable within that setting. That could be due to the approach of the adults who don't have the capability how to talk to, how to maintain a power relation with a kid, how to not to look down towards a kid. And that could be also the environment as well, that the height of a chair, height of a table, or even the temperature of an environment that should be taken into account. So that kind of right setting always says in theory that we should go where they are. That could be their educational setting, their classrooms. They are feeling comfortable. They spend most of their life there, and they are with their friends, classmates, and their teachers, so they are comfortable. Another thing to make the topic, the discussion, relevant to them. If it is not relevant to their lives, their daily life, then it doesn't make sense and is a burden on the shoulder of children. So this is another thing. And how we approach to that problem challenge or the discussion point through the methods is also another one. And the third one, last one, actually my colleague already mentioned how we approached engage with kids should be also specifically designed and taken care of. And what I see in theory that art-based methodologies are heavily used. So involving young people into discussion through drawing, mapping. I'm also talking in the domain of urban planning and design, and that refers to making collage making, drawing, like I said, mapping, or even creating art pieces and then having exhibitions for adults later. Then you're inviting those policymakers into the setting that kids are comfortable to share. And the overall main point is not to alienate them in any setting.
Christian, what is your experience from your view?
Well, we had different settings, different methods. The first challenge is always to select and to say, okay, who are the children we want to involve? Is it the children who live there? Is it the children who go to school there, maybe, or who are walking there every day, and so on? You can think this further, and then of course the question: what are the methods? And Özlem said some that are also used here. We had it in Zinzendorfgasse, for instance, in Graz. With school classes, walking, and the documentation of what they thought about it. I always think it's very interesting if it's more in a vision building process. So you ask children about their perceptions, but how it will be or how it should be in the future. This is something experience that works quite well. So I think in general, it's the most important thing to think, to have a good process from the very beginning, to really make clear how these answers you get from children, how they can be integrated in the whole urban planning process, that they really that there's a real focus on that, and if this is the case, then you can also think about how and who and everything else. And as I said before, the main challenge is now that we as politicians always have to be aware of it, that we do that, and I think it works quite well in this period now. We can also improve, or we still get better in these things. But in the end, I think it would be very good to have it in guidelines, that you have to think about it from the very beginning. I just read our guidelines for participation in general, and then I was looking for the word Kinder, children, and the only thing was that participation also takes place in children parliament. So this is the only sentence where the word Kind is part of it, and yeah, I'm just thinking about if it's enough time to change it until the next elections. But I think this would be good to have it as a part of this participation guidelines, to that it's always included also, and not only if the politicians think about it.
Yeah, so if I may add something from Kinderbüro experience, as we are doing a lot of, luckily, a lot of projects for the city of Graz in that context at the moment. We did really, like in the last years, quite a lot of participation projects connecting to the built environment. And they were completely different types. Ones were like on the conceptual level. So there is like a new concept for quarters in a bigger context. And the city of Graz is looking like, where are the qualities for the people that we should consider in the next years? And we were able to go with children and young people in that area So in sense of walking through the streets and talking with the children. But in Kinderbüro context, I just see very clearly that for me, there are like these three phases of participation processes. So the first is, as both of you already somehow mentioned, that this bringing the right language to the children is like the first process. So to talk with them, bring them closer to talking about planning, talking about the environment, talking about sensual perception, so that they even are able to find the words when asked, like, what is good for you in this area and what is not so good for you. And so that is always the first part we are doing. And then we go into the field and having walks in the neighborhood and talking about all those things they said already before, but then like connected to daily life experiences that makes children talkable and open-minded. And in the end, we always, and that's, I think, a really important step, is the reflection part. So then you have like a lot of input from the children, but then you need somebody who is making it, forming their needs and checking with them in a reflection part. Do you still think today, after like 1 week, the same, or was it just in a moment? Because children always are talking from the moment. And is it really, from my sense, the right, from my side, the right need I formulated? Do you agree to that? So that I know in my pot, that's that I'm taking with me to hand it over to decision makers. And then there is somehow a fourth phase, and that's the most critical, I think. That's like the passing over to decision makers, because then also the decision makers have to talk to children like, that's possible, that's not possible in this process. So for sure we have to frame before to clear that, but then sometimes there are some needs that cannot just be, they are not in the responsibility of the person in that project, for example, on the administration part. It's like about mobility, and that's like a topic that goes to green space. So it's another administration. And so we clear that. But then really to say, okay, these 10 needs we give to you with some examples of how to meet the needs, and some suggestions of design, maybe even. But then there should be like in some part an answer like, those things we take with us, those things we keep in mind, so that the children do know it was not for nothing. So we engaged a lot. We gave you our thoughts, our inputs, our expertise, our visions, but it cannot be done in blank space. So somehow you have to respond to us, as Özlem said before. It's like, all right, we want to be considered. So we need somehow the security and the trust that you do consider. And we need a feedback from you. And that fourth part, it doesn't matter how great the frame is, how great the engagement of the politics are, the most of the time this part gets lost. And if you go more deeper, it's even the translation of how meeting the design, because sometimes there's an interpretation of the needs that maybe is not the right one, but everybody thinks like, okay, we did that, we're so good, but we think that's not really what the children wanted. So even there is no standard at all, and it's really already high critic, because really what's happening now is already really great, you know? It never happened so much as it did now. But we just have not the culture of participation, as you said, as a standard in all those processes. And so therefore we have to improve our learning and to daily develop it. And so that's the question, how we can achieve that. Because in theory we know it, but in practice, completely difficult for different reasons. Yeah. And so in that sense, I would give back to Özlem once more. What do you think about that? Do you agree to that? Do you have different experiences? What do you think about it?
Actually, you summarized something in the theory can be called a good practice. And I agree with you with the highlighted that you mentioned that feedback is the most important thing. So from my research, I collaborate, co-create with young people a lot. And sometimes they come up with ideas like flying bridges or dinosaur-looking buildings, many more. But always there is some background information of those imaginary features that they are sharing with you, and that translating those into something, I'm selling it as like a standards of classic implementation, like what is possible is always difficult. So I can understand the challenge encountered by Kinderbüro, and sometimes I see those challenge for myself, even though I am not a person who can advise to any local municipality, only through research if they read my papers. But I need to translate those ideas within a written form to be able to share with the international community who are interested in children's participation or creating child-friendly cities. And I have that struggle. I usually lost in translation. I don't know how to interpret, but the best thing that you can do, as you mentioned, Katja, going back to kids, hey, we discussed this and we created as a result of our discussion. Did you mean that? This is what you want. Is this affording your need? This is the best thing to do, that feedback moment. And I see why it is challenging for the policymakers. Maybe this can be count as an extra step they don't willing to do. They think that we already ticked the box of participation, so why we need to go back, that kind of questioning. Or creating the right setting for that feedback, because if you come up with, for example, visuals of the imagined features that you discuss with kids, it could be in a voting form, but you will be missing, again, some narratives, some details that could be maybe change and makes it better to afford the needs, actually. So in short, what you describe here is a good process, and I can understand the challenges through my research and practice, yes.
Christian, could you add to that something as well? So you have now these two perspectives. I don't know if there is something talked about even in city parliament when there are these big projects and children are involved. So if there is something like, that is talked about later or not. But can you somehow imagine that the third and fourth step are very essential also to the participation process, and that do you share that it's a huge challenge to implement it in daily life of administrations?
Yes, I mean, I know that, and I think many others know it as well. Still, then often other things are more important, or there is more felt pressure behind it, because of course those people who were involved already, then they are satisfied for some time, and in this time other people want something, and you have other challenges suddenly, that you don't have only the first step or second step. And I think this is in reality a problem. I just thought about the future conference we did concerning our inner city. We also involved children in this conference, But in general, the question of reflection of this translation in the end, it's so critical, and it's of course difficult. But you really have to take time for that, because otherwise you just build like a cloud, and then after some months or some years, the cloud disappears. And we also know that this is not good for democracy as a whole, because those people who try to bring in their ideas, and probably it's the same for children, that they get frustrated and say, okay, I don't want to be part of that, and then they don't go to the elections and everything else. So I think it's important to think about all these four phases that you said from the very beginning, that in the end you really have a good result, and also the translation to the concrete political measures, that this works out as good as possible.
And I also can give one another challenge, then add to it, because from the children's perspective, first you want to have, I guess, or it's important that there are like these loops, like the first round, and then when there's something created, maybe the second round in checking and giving feedback. But on the other side, children just have a certain time, and for them a year is like really long. So for sure they want to have very fast something to see a result. So that's like the hugest challenge, I guess, that on one side you should take time, you should take another round, and on the other side something should happen very fast, that they see an effect of their input. So I think that's maybe really to think in the future round or in a bigger context much more, how, if there is a standard developed for participation for cities, how that challenge can be how to find solutions for that challenge, let's say it in that way. Because on the one side it takes time, on the other side it should go fast. So in that context, it would be so interesting if like there could be something temporary first, and then they see already it goes in that way, and maybe we look at it if it's still working, and then if it's fine, then we go further, and in meanwhile we can plan more in detail about materials, about budget, feasibility, whatever. That therefore I so like to talk about needs. And in our project, in one of our latest projects, we really shifted to a list of needs, because then you have like the needs, you have like a design concept just to show you can answer this need in that way, but it's not like it has to be that way. And the needs in that way can never be lost, because otherwise maybe you pick one and then you say, we talked to the children, there was a list actually of 20, we know it, who made the participation process with the children. And in the end, like in a magazine, there's then written, we participated children, it resulted that need, so we brought it in that project. But in the end, the 19 other needs are completely lost and never mentioned, and nobody thinks about them anymore. And so it's also about that. If there are needs, maybe it's just a small thing, maybe it's not an expensive thing, but somehow you show, I see you, I see your need. Maybe we cannot do something now, but as a result, we brought it in, maybe a committee of participation of the city, or we gave it in the concept we made together, that somewhere it's written and we don't forget it. Or we plan something, for a short time, or we give you the right to plan and do something there, or whatever. But I see the need and it's not lost. I think that's also another challenge with the results and bringing them into daily life design in the public space. Özlem, do you have any examples maybe? Because you said you're working with on university level, but did you have cooperations with communities or cities where you worked really in a process, in a real process, where you maybe have experiences you can tell us about? Exactly, maybe in that sense, you have now your
Yes.
results, and now the
Yeah.
somehow should come into life.
Yeah, not direct collaboration, but I am aware of an organization, a foundation, to be exact, Bernard van Neer Foundation, which is based in the Netherlands, but they are internationally working with different city management, including Istanbul. And with my supervisor, we got a funding to do research directly with moms and about their needs with their toddlers, how they manage daily urban life with their young kids outside. And we know that as a part of that Urban 95 project, they do interim implementation, that what you exactly mentioned. So before changing the urban space for a certain point, there are interim implementations, really basic, the coloring the flooring and putting some kind of barriers for cars not to invade that space, bringing some seating furniture and basic playable elements to kindle some belonging and ownership. Actually, these are working for, like, the kids, and the parents will see that, hey, this place affording a need of mine, which could be having a space to stop and talk to neighbors, or having the space in a safe environment to let my kids free and run and play other kids, engage with other kids and socialize. Even I want to socialize, but I don't know where to go as a mom or as a dad, that I can go because I will see other parents there letting kids play. So those kind of implementations already happening in many cities, including Istanbul. I know one city from Kosovo, and if I'm not wrong, from Bulgaria. So this kind of pop-up spaces heavily used. I can say that as an example, and as a good example. Katja, you are muted.
Yeah, I'm muted, I saw it. So interesting. I think the city of Graz already started also with some temporary attempts, and maybe it's developing and going further also in processes when it comes to projects when children are involved. So let's see. I'm looking forward to the future, even in Graz. In Vienna, there's also happening a lot. So they have like this children million, where there are a lot of participation processes started with children, so they can apply with their ideas, and if they are selected, then they get like 10,000 euros, I guess. That's like the maximum to realize their ideas. And so I guess it has a huge impact if children feel like they can participate, they are seen, they are empowered with their voices. I think it does a lot in growing up when you have possibilities like that. So
and maybe to add also the involvement of parents if the children are very young, because I experience it myself now. My older son becomes 3 years soon, and it's not so easy if you just want to go to the city. Where can you go? What can you do? If you want to meet somebody, sitting just in a cafe, it's not that many spaces that you can just say, okay, children, run and have fun, because there's often traffic or something else. So it's a very interesting perspective also, and I think it's very important to involve the parents for the younger children.
Yeah, for sure. And therefore, what you said at the beginning, Özlem, I just remember now, it's such an important point that to give a quality feedback to the whole city, to a politics and the city administration is so important, so that the city gets an idea. We are planning, and are we planning for children and family? Are we on the right way to it? Otherwise, they are not very satisfied, and for sure are not engaging in the city that much. That makes problems for the city again. So it goes together, and therefore, for sure, it's an important reason to make that space, to create that space. And also the standards and platforms, as you said, for voices to be heard. And that leads me to our final round. How can one get started and also sustainably anchor participation? You already emphasized a lot the guidelines, so maybe we can take that as a starting point and collect again what should be in that guidelines from your point of view, or what other important points are should be in there, so that cities have really like a working tool from somebody who maybe has already experiences with participation, but considering then there are other institutions and parts of the city administration who are maybe more far away from that topic and that experiences. So I think it's yeah, from the one side, really like a standard, a formulated one, but also maybe something that helps creating a participation culture generally, but especially also with young people. Because I think it's another thing to talk and understand processes with children in that whole field of participation in a setting of city planning, city development, city participation. Graz, just that you know, Özlem, has an own department for participation. And so we have like a set standard that, for example, if there is a new plot planning, create a plot plan created. Christian, maybe you help me out with the right name in English. Just sets like the right lines for a whole plot. Then there's always a public meeting, and people can come and give their opinions and discuss it. And after a while, then there is like a date, and that after that it's like overworked, and then it's finalized, and then like it's set in the main plan. And for children, if there are like huge strategies, it's the culture at the moment in the city of Graz always to implement children in a one or the other way, but there is not a standard. It's just the culture to have the sensibility to implement children in the participation process. Yeah, because the culture of participation is quite well working at the moment in the city of Graz. Yeah. So what should be in the guidelines, and how could we start to set also a standard or best practice for creating a participation culture really in mainstream on a city level? What do you think?
Shall I go?
Yeah, welcome
Okay.
to
go. So I can maybe direct to 2 points. One is, again, a mindset change, but in a different way this time, which is to define the city as a whole as a place for kids. So we tend to, I refer to adults when I say we tend to think or tend to invite kids to talk about their environments. Always we invite them for school space, playgrounds, or parks. But at the same time, we see them everywhere, even the babies with their moms and dads in a stroller on a street, or kids biking on a biking path. So we need to change our mindsets to accept that city as a whole as a playground for kids. If we say still think about a playground, it is a playground, is a socializing ground for teenagers, is a playground for school-age kids, and is an experiment area for toddlers, even in a stroller. So this is one thing I want to highlight under the guidelines. And the other one is shared responsibility. So that shared responsibility can be extended to inclusion of parents as the participants voicing their young kids. My colleague Christian already mentioned, and what I did for my research as well. If we can't talk to infants and toddlers, they don't have the skills yet, or capability yet, that we can advocate their parents to voice their needs in a collective, like a merged geography, merged needs. And that shared responsibility can be extended to including their parents in the participation processes to be able to respond to a whole group of children, because 0 to 18 is a big group, heterogeneous group, and their skill sets are different. Growing is not static. And we need to find a way to include them either through representation, through their parents, or direct participation by creating participatory spaces for them. And that shared responsibility also goes to adults, us, policymakers, researchers, or organizations and facilitators, that we have the responsibility to use that change mindset to accept city as a whole, not just focusing on specific environments, and providing proper participatory settings for young people. I can give an example for mindset and shared responsibility through my research. Actually, my master's students did. One of the research was about activism of young people, youth. I think they were 15 to 16 years old, Dutch teenagers. And they are overburdened because of the climate discussion and what it brings to their life in the future. And basically, they are calling for adults to be the responsible, take the responsibility to do something about it. But at the same time, they are demanding participatory environments to be able to voice their ideas and to be able to say something about it. And then that shared responsibility also goes to city councils who are designing their cities. For example, Groningen, where I live and where I work, is one of the European Union top 3 livable cities, and especially for the families with kids. But at the same time, when you check the policy making, they take some actions towards creating child-friendly or family-friendly city. But at the same time, they're only focusing, like I said, child-focused environments. They create schools in every this kilometer, and they have the mobility in between. But at the same time, it is more broader than that. So we are losing that broader approach to that. I can also say one thing about designing the playgrounds as the designers, like playground designers. For example, one of the research done by my master's student find out with the German designers, urban and playground designers, they are heavily aware of unstructured play, which is highly important for children's development, which is highlighted within the research. They are aware of the value, but sometimes they are, not sometimes, mostly, they are restricted by, for example, guidelines that we design, because the protection of kids, not to take many risks, but at the same time, risk is important for the development of kid. And next to that, the cost of the playground, make it sustainable, even applying circularity within make it more tactical, more softer in a way that color and the material, not in terms of risk. It's heavily regulated by those playground regulations. Cost, another thing that they can't choose freely, the material or the design. So again, I would go back to the notion of shared responsibility and changing the mindset in terms of accepting city as a whole, a playground for everybody.
Thank you. That was already a really great overview. Just one more example, what you said, because it's like one of my things I always bring in, also in the last event Christine was talking about the inner city. To use potential, like when city is like, because Graz really has a lot of construction sites at the moment, because the city administration is, and the politics of the city are improving the city. So a lot of new streets are built, a lot of really heavenly structures of trams and everything are built. So it's like huge construction site. And using that as a playground in the sense of, you know, when you have small children, they like to just look at these construction sites like hours, you know, you don't need anything anymore. So if you somehow combine that and make like adventure tours, and there is somebody who is explaining what's going on, really to understand like how the pipes and everything underground goes together, how a tree is settled and what construction is needed that a tree in a city can survive in a good way, and the water, so the green and the blue structure. So you can really educate even children through that, using that, and not seeing it just as a negative thing, because everybody is a nerd. But I guess the toddlers are the only ones who are completely not unnerved by situations like that when it's not too loud, because that's for sure a thing for that age. Yeah, so thank you. I would hand over to Christian. What do you think? Do you want to add something to the points of Özlem when talking about creating standards or participation culture?
I think the issue of the whole city as a playground or as an interactive and interesting and a good space for children. I think this is very interesting to think because it means that you need, on the one hand side, general participation opportunities for them. So this is what the Children Parliament, for instance, could be or should be. And the other thing is then to have these projects and the participation within the projects. That was what we were talking before already, where you have guidelines for this participation in different projects, and I think there should be more focus on children in general. But then I also thought about this issue of the regulation. So there are also other guidelines, not only our guidelines of participation, but also the guidelines of how we build playgrounds. I think we have quite good playgrounds in Graz with a interesting and also sustainable, what do you say, like things for children there. But you always have also this feeling of, okay, there is a fence and you're just in this small field, and this is where children can do whatever they want, and in the rest of the city it's dangerous because it's traffic or whatever. also the discussion now with closing the schools because of this. It's also always the question: is the city that dangerous that you have to lock children that they should go out? And I think this would need another mindset in this context as well, to say, okay, the whole city should be attractive, or should be should be possible to use it for children. Sometimes it's hard in English. And my last thought was also about combining, Katja, as your example was with the building sites. So we always have these structures that are, as I said before, one is traffic and urban planning, and then we have another department which is responsible for children. And I don't think that they talk to each other. How can children, or how can we make some offers for children in the time of our construction of this construction sites? So I think in this combination of different fields of politics, there is also a good chance to make the city better for children. And maybe it's not that much you have to do for that. It's just, hey, you invite children, and somebody there tells them what it is, and probably the engineers are happy that they can also show what they do. And if there is maybe someone who helps them to find a good language, that they can talk with children about their work, then it's a big step, but it's not that much that it's not needed. It's not, you don't need to have that much resources for that.
Thank you. I just would like to add another experience. So we had like a talk. So there is like a Kinderbüro meeting from year to year. And like 2 years ago, we had a meeting on that topic. And from Switzerland, we got the experience that it would also be possible that there is like in the end of the year, a meeting with the main departments for the next year, where they are quite open-minded about what is going on the next year, what is planned. And then you have an overview about, okay, here is participation necessary, here it is feasible, and so on. And so you have already a plan for a whole year to know where and how you can, or why, to argument it, you will participate, or you can enable participation in the next year. So everybody knows about the resources needed, because you check what is feasible and what not, and what platforms are needed, who can be in the lead, and so on. And on the other side, you can create a really doable time plan, because what in the standard, I think, is very important, and it goes somehow also again with the culture, or with the right setting for children in this process of democratic justice in a city, that children, there's a huge difference when participation, including children into these processes, than adults, because adults can arrange easily. So they can decide, I'm going there, I'm going independently, and so on. Children, it's always to create the safe space, as you said before, Özlem, and the setting. And so we need really a lot of time. So I say I need somehow, in the best way, like 3 months, but at least 2 months before, I need to know if we are doing a project together, because I have to make a concept to think about what's working, and I have to contact the groups of the cities in the city if they would like to, and if they can participate, and they need then like weeks to establish that in their daily life. So to talk with the parents, to talk, for example, in the schools with the other teachers, with the children. So I cannot say, okay, in 2 weeks I'm coming to the school and I'll be doing this and that. So then it becomes something, everybody's stressed. Children have to participate. They don't even want to, but they are like forced to, because it's good for a school maybe as well to do the project. So if it's really child friendly, then somehow we need to have a structure that we really have a plan how to do it. And as you said before, the city as a whole space that needs to be taken into consideration when talking about children and youth participation. In Graz, actually, we have since decades, I guess, in the STEP written the STADTPLANUNG, so an instrument of implementing children and youth participation in the city development, but also in Graz, the elderly people are taken into account as well, which is a really good thing, I guess. So I think too, I'm in the same opinion. But we never have the resources to do it. There's always something more important, or when it's not, there is no money. So it's decades now. So I think that's also a huge step. How can we go there? That we, because in Graz, it would be the plan. So there is like a structure, just bring it to life and find the resources that somehow we can start with it. How is the situation in Groningen? As you said, there are projects, as I remember, Özlem, but it's just very focused on the classical spaces for children, right? So like playgrounds, school environments, but not in the whole city decisions when it comes to urban planning.
Yeah, my knowledge about what is happening in Groningen is little, but through one research, I would say that yes, is like a patchwork kind of approach through the child-focused environments are happening. But next to that, they do have the organizations to involve kids into discussions. But I would be more comfortable to talk about the setting of the city of Istanbul, because I did extensive research for the city of Istanbul.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about children within the political environment, is always the definition comes passive. So they are the receiver of social services, public services, or even the use of the city. They always needs to be protected, and they have a kind of overarching theme of family. So they are always counted as a part of the family, but not as an individual. So that is also reflected in the local municipality as well, even though there are things happening like involvement of Bernard van Leer Foundation and doing collaboration with the local regional municipalities, doing interim implementations. And through that, negotiations are happening, because then one can argue that, hey, we did that interim implementation, this was the pilot and it's working. So maybe you should think about applying this in the broader context within your jurisdiction, a regional or local municipality, and that will benefit you in terms of this and this, and mostly like people are feeling much more happier, feeling more belonging, etc. But within the broader context, the metropolitan municipality, these are still hard terms to not only the inclusion of young people into decision making, but also responding the view of city as a whole, because it's a much more a challenging context in terms of political environment that you maybe are aware of the situation, and also the size of the city and the densification heavily happening. So these are really challenging things. And like you said, when it comes to doing something for children or beneficial for children, it always comes to, hey, we don't have much funding to do that, especially when it comes to children's participation. But I would conclude that anything is possible and creativity is the key. I would take the example that Katja you gave and Christian already continued with. So why not, because Istanbul is also construction site, like we can call it like a big construction site, construction happening, because this is in the heart of the economy, and Istanbul is the economy capital of the country. So making a small observation point as a box around a construction point, and creatively involving kids watching that place and getting information by one person about what is happening, as a small step, but actually this is can be strategically used to collect ideas from young people, what they think about their city, what they think about the pollution caused by this construction, or the future of this construction, or even their experience living around construction sites. Like this is really strategic thing to do, and creativity is the key. And I also would say that as a conclusion, that starting small is something to make it big later. That we don't have to give immediately, because this is a long conversation and it will be a challenging one, advocating for giving the voting rights to kids. But starting small, and then we will have the opportunity to make it big, because then radical thinking will follow, I believe, that because we will see the benefits of those small things, and then we have the strong hand to advocate for more and more radical changes, or more bigger changes.
Thank you. That was very beautifully said. So I would hand over to Christian for your concluding points. What would you finally contribute to a discussion? Maybe 2-3 points you think could be like the best now to start, or what are the main points of the discussion you would like to conclude with?
So for me, the first thing is this change of mindset. It's the mindset about participation in general. But it's also about the mindset about the whole city is to be children friendly, and not only to have some safe spaces for children. So this is also a big change in thinking in urban planning, and I think both are very important for sustainable development of our city. On the other hand side, I think it's really important to focus on the processes themselves. So how the participation is built, and especially on this translation phase, I would say. I think there's still a lot to do to find good process from the very beginning, where in the end you have a good translation and real impact afterwards that also can be seen and can be, of course, reflected again. But in the end, this would be effective and meaningful participation, as you said. And I think we should work on that concerning our guidelines and other things we discussed. But I think there are potentials, and we should use them as a city as well. We don't hear you.
Thank you. And Özlem, I want to give it back once more to you again. What would you conclude now? I will also give you the space from this main discussion today. What are you taking with you, or what are your key points you from the last part? You already summarized in 2 main points that I really also appreciate a lot. But I want to give you the space for the whole discussion as well. What are you taking with you, or what are your main points you want to conclude with?
To be honest, can I say that Christian is a policymaker within his position? So it is nice to see that a policymaker admitting that urban planning and design has its own way of technical thinking and technical communication, but also advocating for children's rights to participate and accepting them as mature and capable enough to talk about those big topics is something I am happy to hear. So you can accept me as a researcher that is not heavily collaborating with policymakers. Maybe that my comment right now derives from that experience, but in a way that it is great to hear, and also great to hear that the UNCRC Article 12 is directly translated in city policymaking. This is something also I would love to hear every day. And also, we shared some examples. Also, maybe we speculate some examples, like that refers to the construction site and observation. Is that easy? So our imagination, even though we are not kids anymore, we talk about our experience when we were kids, but it's not reflecting the contemporary living, urban living of kids living right now, right in our cities. But even though we shouldn't be putting our feet in their shoes for sure, but it is that easy. That is a little bit creativity and a little bit radical thinking, and then empathy. I think we can achieve.
Yeah, so I'm so happy with both your conclusions. So, as children rights advocate at the moment in my role here in the discussion, I'm so happy that as well in research as well as in politics, children rights find their way, and there are so many people who are engaging for it. I hope it improves. I'm looking so forward if there are soon standards and maybe even code of conduct, or an implementation of settings for everybody, that it's completely normal to see the benefits of participation of people, but especially of children and young people and their parents in the city decisions, especially when it comes to city development. Yeah, and I see that there are a lot of things happening, and I'm so looking forward in participating in creating these new standards with the whole crowd together. So let's move on talking and improving all those standards. Thank you a lot for all your time and your experience and your knowledge. I appreciate it a lot. And yeah, see and hear you soon. I thank you for the discussion. And finally, I want to say that this was now the second of 3 children's rights talks in this year. The next one is tomorrow, and it will be about children's rights and care. The topic is when children become caregivers, and there are really a great speaker board of experts that will give an insight in what that means, what is important to know, and what is important to consider in the future. So thank you. All the links will be at the video. Soon it will also become a radio show at Radio Helsinki, where you can listen to it, and on www.kinderbüro.at you can get all the further information. So thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.